All right, all right. I am Peter Alessandria, and for the next 90 minutes, I invite you to be bigger than you think you are. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. Let's jump in with some announcements. So we're going to start with some announcements. We're going to have an opportunity for people who are new, if you would like to introduce yourself, and as well as for people to share any victories they've had over the last week or so. I have some recommended reading for you. We have a new feature, the Affirmation of the Day. We're going to listen to a little audiobook excerpt from my book. We'll have our topic discussion, take a break, come back to do the assignment, and we'll have time for question and answer. And then we'll wrap everything up by 9:30. All right, so our first announcement, as usual, I have an offer code for you guys. If you don't have the book or if you would like an additional copy of the book, these are author-signed paperbacks. You can get them for 20% off. Just enter the code BOOK20 at checkout at bebiggertoday.com/book. And I will personally sign it to you or whoever you want me to. All right, so the audiobook is available for pre-order. Now, unfortunately, it's not done. And I'm actually now saying the anticipated release date, the availability is to be announced. I'm doing some additional work on it. There were some technical issues with some of the earlier recordings that I did. I know most of you have already purchased or pre-ordered the book. If for any reason you can't wait a few weeks, I'm happy to refund your money, but if you can sit tight, it's going to be worth the wait. All right. And in both the case of the audiobook and the paperback, there's a money-back guarantee. So if you don't love it, just let me know and you get your money back. But I'm sure you guys are going to love it when it's finally done. And actually, I'll love it even more when it's finally done. And we have merch, t-shirts and hats. You can get 20% off at bebiggertoday.com/merch. We have t-shirts and hats. Be the life of your fall season with attire from bebiggertoday.com. And finally, I am available for one-on-one coaching. If you're a creative person, if you're a writer, photographer, artist, or just a regular person who wants to kind of move forward, or if you have a business and you'd like me to come in and talk to your management team or your sales team, we can talk to them about being bigger than they think they are. So just reach out to me via the website and we can set up a consultation and go from there. All right, so another announcement. Starting next week, we now have to enter a passcode. Zoom has changed their security settings, so we either have to have a waiting room or a passcode. I don't want to do the waiting room because that means I got to stop what I'm doing to let people in. So this is the passcode. Couldn't make it any easier. It's the word bigger, all caps. It will be on the announcement. It'll be on the confirmation email that you get when you register, and it will also be on the reminder email. But just in case, just so you're not freaked out by it, you'll know that going forward, every week now, we have to have a passcode, and it is bigger, as in be bigger than you think you are. All right, so this is an opportunity for people who would like to say hello if you're new, or if there's somebody who would like to share a victory from the last week or so.
Hey, Peter. Hey. Hi, I'm Nick. Hey, guys.
Hey, Nick.
Just first time here. I, admire anybody who's, who is in this right now. So I'm happy to be here. I'm in the right place.
Great. Thank you, Nick. Good to see you. Glad you made it.
Yeah, man.
And I'm going to talk about my relationship with Nick a little bit later. Anybody else want to say hi?
Hi.
Is that Rajiv?
Yeah, hi, Peter. Hi.
Hey, Rajiv.
Hi, it's Rajiv here. So I am first time for this meeting, but I have personal relationship with Peter. I've shoot together in New Jersey when I was there. Now I am in Florida, Jacksonville.
Great. So good to see you. Glad you're here. Awesome. Anybody else want to say hi? Share a victory? No? All right. So we will jump in. So I'm going to start with my recommended reading for tonight. This is a book that was written in 1984. Now, some of you may know Louise Hay. She's kind of the queen of self-help. She's actually an awesome person. She has a very interesting story, personal story. And this was the first book that one of the first books I read probably in the early 1990s that really made an impact on me. And I picked it up again recently as the audiobook, and I've been listening to it over and over again. You guys know I love affirmations. Louise is like the queen of the affirmations. This is a very powerful book, and it was, I think she sold like 50 million copies of this book. If you've been around self-help or 12-step or anything like that, you may already be familiar with her. If not, go check out the website, because not only is she an author, a speaker, and a teacher, but she has actually built a publishing empire and represents all kinds of authors and speakers and whatnot. And she has a publication company, a publishing house, and there's all kinds of great stuff online, print books, audiobooks. Can't say enough about how wonderful she is and how wonderful her organization is. So You Can Heal Your Life, Louise Hay. It's hayhouse.com. You definitely want to check that out if you're not familiar with her work, or like if you're like me, where you read the book 25 years ago and you want to come back to it. It's like a whole new experience for me now. So that's my recommended reading list. And actually, these are from You Can Heal Your Life. So picking up the book reminded me of the power of affirmations. Obviously, we've been talking about that for the last 3 months, 2.5 months. So these are my affirmations for today, and if you got the email, the confirmation email with the assignment, you know that this was part of the assignment for today. So the first affirmation is, I love myself. The second affirmation, I'm going to do a close-up on this. I love myself. I approve of myself. I love being me. Now, Louise suggests that we do this in front of a mirror, and I've been doing that, and it's great. But it may be a little uncomfortable at first, so you can kind of just ease your way in, just kind of walk around the house saying them out loud. Nobody will think you're strange, so you could actually go out in public and do it. Anyway, really powerful affirmations. And as some of you know, I'm doing a revised edition of the book, and I'm including a list of sample affirmations in the back. But if you can't wait, as I said, check out Louise Hay's books. There's obviously lots of great sources for affirmations out there, but these are 3 of my current favorite. I love being me is huge for me, because for most of my life I didn't love being me. I always wanted to be somebody else. So I'm happy to say that today I love being me, and I love myself, and I approve of myself. So we're continuing on with our discussion. This is from chapter 2 in the book, Taking Responsibility. This is actually going to be, I think, the last night that we're on this topic. As I've said, I'm going to review some of the stuff that we've talked about over the last couple of weeks. And there's a reason I spent so much time focusing on this topic, and I'll revisit some of that when we get back. But what I want to do now is I want to play an excerpt from the audiobook. This is chapter 2, as I said, and if you have the book, it's if you want to read along, it starts on page 62. Now, it is a little different. I have been revising as I've gone along over the last few months, working on the audiobook, so it doesn't track exactly, but it's close enough, so if you want to read along, you can do that. So let's get the audiobook going. Give me 1 second here.
Fake it till you make it. So we've already talked about the importance of replacing our negative beliefs with more positive ones, and that positive affirmations, vision statements, guided visualizations, vision boards, and mind movies are all good ways to do this. I've included a list of sample affirmations in the appendix. 2 of my favorites are, I got this, and I'm a good person and it's okay for me to have a good life. But remember, affirmations only work if they're believable. If they're not, they may actually make things worse, since our minds now tell us that we're kidding ourselves. The same may be true of our vision statements and/or visualizations. The key is to see ourselves in a positive way that's also believable to our subconscious mind. Try starting small. Instead of, I can handle anything life sends my way today, say, I know it may be tough at times, but eventually I'll get through this. Or, I'm taking small steps towards resolving this in a positive way for everyone involved. If you go too big without really believing in the affirmations, your mind may try to derail you. Another thing to keep in mind is that we may need to use affirmations to shift our self-esteem first. Affirming, I earn or receive $1 million this year won't help someone whose core belief is that they're unworthy or undeserving in life. So, especially when you're first starting out, focus on affirmations that raise your self-image as opposed to specific statements of what you want to obtain or achieve in life. Related to this is not understanding how affirmations work. We know that thoughts lead to feelings, feelings lead to words and actions lead to the outcomes we experience. In this world, we have to take action to achieve our goals. This is not about sitting around repeating affirmations and having stuff magically appear in our lives. When affirmations don't work, it's usually because people overlook this. They fail to follow up their positive thoughts with positive actions and then get discouraged when the affirmations don't seem to change their life. If there's still resistance to making up positive thoughts about yourself, consider what we said earlier. All the negative stuff most of us believe about ourselves is made up too. Our negative self-image is usually based on the conclusions of a 6-year-old. Therefore, positive affirmations such as, I can handle this, or I trust myself to make good choices and decisions, are no more false than, I'm a screw-up, or I'll never amount to anything. For me, there was a great sense of relief when I realized that all the bad stuff I thought about myself might not be true. This realization gave me hope that my future could actually be different from my past. You might be thinking, well, I get as kids we misinterpret a lot of things, but what about all the stuff I've done as an adult? While it's true grown-ups can act in less than enlightened ways, even though they should know better, making mistakes or even doing harmful things to ourselves or others doesn't invalidate us as people. What we want is more self-forgiveness rather than more self-recrimination. Yes, it's very important to take responsibility for our actions, especially when those actions negatively impact others. Yet we don't have to hate ourselves to do this. Remember, there's a difference between what we do and who we are. Regression analysis. In terms of seeing ourselves differently, I realized several years ago that I would often regress back to being like a little kid in certain situations or with certain people. When I perceived someone as an authority figure, I became afraid to speak up for myself or risk upsetting them by expressing a contrary opinion. In this vein, for many years, one of my biggest fears in life was that a client was going to call me up and yell at me for doing something wrong. This resulted in me feeling anxious, overwhelmed, and defensive. Needless to say, it wasn't much fun to be trapped in such emotions. I also certainly couldn't do my best work for clients when I was feeling this way. The above is a really clear example that the problem is with me and not with other people. Living in fear of getting yelled at is only possible when who I think I am is a little kid. When I see myself as an adult, I don't have the same reactions. When I first became aware that I was regressing, I would literally stop what I was doing and remind myself that I'm not a little kid anymore. Consciously taking a pause allowed me to respond rather than react. I would tell myself that I have ways of taking care of myself that I didn't have as a kid. Heck, I thought, if it gets really bad, I can just get in my car and drive away. That wasn't an option when I was 5 or 7 or whatever age. But we have to be conscious enough in each moment to realize when we're regressing. Without this awareness, it's very difficult to disengage from our past. This is why it's helpful to spend some time identifying our unconscious patterns of thinking and behaving before engaging with difficult people or in difficult situations. Talk is cheap. I mentioned a moment ago that for affirmations to be effective, they have to motivate us to get into action. Getting into action is part of taking responsibility for our lives. It's one thing to say, I can handle whatever comes my way today. It's another to pick up the phone and call that prospect we've been avoiding for the last 3 weeks, or to apply for the job we've been putting off for the last 3 months, or to send the manuscript we've been talking about sending for the last 3 years. We put our excuses aside and do whatever we need to do to create the life we want. This is because action is an expression of desire, and desire is the fuel that propels us to attain our goals and dreams in life. We'll look at how action and desire are related in Chapter 4. For now, note that weak desire equals weak action equals weak results. In that chapter, I'll also describe how getting into action changed everything in terms of my photography career. In this regard, something that was very helpful for me was having an action partner. This was someone I spoke with on a regular basis, usually daily, who supported me in taking the actions necessary to move my business forward. I provided the same support for them. Mastermind groups may also be helpful in this regard. Of course, it may take a while to find the right people to partner with, but I would have never accomplished what I did with my photography business if I tried to do everything on my own. The good news is, eventually new actions will lead to new experiences, and new experiences will lead to a new self-image. This positive feedback loop will reinforce the idea that we can change who we think we are, and that we are able to handle a lot more than we thought we could. The fake it till you make it affirmations have now become reality, and we have shifted who we think we are. Responsibility is not the same as blame. I'm going to end this chapter with what I think is the biggest thing most of us need to learn when it comes to taking responsibility. I mentioned earlier that in my own life, I have at times been reluctant to admit when I did something wrong. This is because I was afraid it was just more evidence I was a bad person. As a result, dodging responsibility became a bit of an art form for me. I don't think I'm alone in this. I bet at one time or another, nearly everyone has been tempted to avoid owning up to one or more of their misdeeds. I believe the reason this is so is because most of us equate responsibility with blame. We think it means liability. We see being responsible as the same as being guilty. Thus, even simple mistakes can become proof of our unworthiness. The more we judge ourselves for our shortcomings, the less likely it is we'll want to take responsibility for them. So once again, the problem lies with who we think we are. Many of us see ourselves as bad or guilty without even having done anything. We often unknowingly carry this burden of guilt, and as a result, avoid anything that might reinforce these negative feelings about ourselves. We also talked about how we can engage in self-recrimination when we mess things up. This doesn't help either when it comes to taking responsibility. We'd be much more likely to admit our mistakes if we loved ourselves in spite of them. Some people say it's important to feel bad when we do something wrong. If we don't, there's nothing to stop us from doing it again. They think feeling guilty is a check on their bad behavior. While I agree it's important to have a moral compass, guilt isn't that compass. Remember this always. Guilt is just another word for self-hatred. No matter what anyone says, feeling bad about ourselves for anything does not make us better people. A better way to think about responsibility is the 3 A's that we discussed earlier: awareness, accountability, and action. We want to be aware of what we did that may have created a problem. We want to be accountable for any harm or damage we caused. And we want to take action to make things right. Notice there's nothing in there about feeling guilty or beating ourselves up. Even feeling remorse isn't necessary if we continually monitor our actions and then jump in quickly to set things right. In this way, as I mentioned earlier, taking responsibility removes the guilt we might otherwise feel. Making things right builds our self-esteem rather than diminishing it.
All right. So there you have it. That's an excerpt from chapter 2. We're going to talk about some of that stuff. But for people who are new, I just want to kind of recap the last couple of months. Most of you know my story, but if not, in 2009, I'd been an entertainment attorney for almost 20 years in Los Angeles. And while I was doing that, I fell in love with filmmaking and photography. And in 2008, when the global financial crisis hit, I actually lost my law business. And I decided I was going to do something more fun and exciting with my life and follow my passion, which at the time was photography. And I also decided to move back to the East Coast at that time. And so I moved back to be closer to my family, and I uprooted my life and stopped practicing law completely. And for almost 3 years, I was completely stuck. I could not get my business going, couldn't get this business going. And at first I thought it was the economy because, the economy was still kind of rough. And then I thought, no, it's not the economy. It's because of all the competition from all the other photographers. That's what it is. And then I realized, no, maybe that's not what it is. And then I thought, I know what it is. I don't have any kind of a formal education in art or photography. I've actually never taken a photography class. And I thought, well, maybe that's not it. Maybe, I don't have the latest and greatest camera equipment. That must be what the problem is. Turned out none of that was the problem. The problem was not out there. The problem was in here. And it turned out that I had a very negative self-image when it came to being a creative person. And I was terrified of rejection. I was terrified of criticism. terrified of putting myself out there, even as a commercial photographer, forget about as an artist. And all of that conspired to just have me kind of hiding out from life. And so after almost 3 years, I was running out of money, and I realized I got to do something if I want to get this new career going. And so I started really looking at myself. I started looking at my thinking. And again, as some of you know, if you've read the book, in chapter 1, I talk about this question of who do you think you are? In my opinion, this is the most important question we can ask ourselves, because whoever we think we are is exactly who we're going to end up being in life. And when I started looking at this question, and another way of saying who do you think you are is how do you see yourself? And when I started looking at this question, I saw that I had this really negative self-image. I thought I was didn't have any talent. I thought I was unworthy, not good enough, didn't have what it took. Nobody's going to like me. I'm going to be rejected. I'm going to feel ashamed, and it's going to be terrible. And when you have a mind filled with that kind of a self-image, it's very hard to get off the couch. So thank God I was running out of money, because I really had to start to move past all of that. And I really began to look at this image of myself and begin to question it and say, is that really true? Is it really true that I'm not good enough? Is it really true that I don't have what it takes to be successful or to even be of service, as a photographer? And I really started to question all those limiting thoughts and beliefs that I had about myself. And then I started using different things like affirmations. I wrote a vision statement. I put together a visualization, guided visualization. These are all things I talk about in chapter 1 in the book, and that I've talked about in previous workshops, which if you weren't here, you can go back and watch those videos from those earlier workshops where I go through all the different tools. There are basically 5 main tools that I've used to reprogram my thinking, to literally reprogram my thoughts and my beliefs about myself, because what I realized is the situation is never the problem. The problem is always and only how I see myself in that situation. And it turns out that's really good news, because I can always change how I see myself. I can always change who I think I am. Now, it's simple, but not easy. And if you're like me, I had like 30-something years of negative programming that I had reinforced over and over and over and over and over again, to the point where I just thought those negative thoughts and beliefs that I had about myself, that was just the truth. That was just who I was. That was the way it was. There was not much I could do about that. I'll never change. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I realized, if I want to make this work, I better teach an old dog new tricks, because this stuff, the thoughts and beliefs that I have about myself are not serving me. They're holding me back. And so I really began to change. I began to change my thinking. And then as I talk about, with things like affirmations and all of that, the purpose of that is to eventually to change my feelings. So here's the way it works, as far as I can tell, is our thoughts lead to our feelings lead to our words and actions, and our words and actions lead to the outcomes that we experience in life. So if I start with crappy thoughts, I'm going to have crappy feelings. If I have crappy feelings, I'm going to say crappy words and take crappy actions. And if I say crappy words and take crappy actions, I'm going to experience crappy outcomes. Now, of course, the opposite is also true. So I began to work on a positive self-image. I began, as I said, to reprogram who I thought I was, how I saw myself. And then I began to take action consistent with those new thoughts and beliefs about myself. And that's the hardest part. It actually turns out it's pretty easy to sit on the floor in a meditation and listen to positive thoughts and affirmations and to say positive things about yourself. At least, for me, it seemed to be easy. But the hard part was actually going out there in the world. The hard part was doing things like what I eventually ended up doing was cold calling. I ended up doing almost 2 years of cold calling for my commercial product photography business and for my headshot and portrait business. And I was calling people in local businesses, retailers, manufacturers. For the product photography and for the headshots, I was calling accounting firms, law firms, insurance brokerages. I was focused more on the executive portrait and headshot business. And when I started making, first of all, it took me like 3 months to make that first call. I mean, I was terrified. And I was literally, my hands would shake and I would sweat. And when I finally started calling, I was like stammering. It was awful. But it turned out that all the people that I spoke to in 2 years of cold calling, I never got hung up on once. The people were so nice to me. They were much nicer to me than I was to the telemarketers who were calling me. Some of them, actually, I guess they felt sorry for me. They actually went out of their way to help me. They gave me the names of their friends or other businesses they knew that might be interested because they weren't. And I did that. I was doing that, and I probably did it for 3 or 4 weeks, and somebody finally said yes. And that created a whole new problem. It was like, oh my God, somebody actually wants to hire me. And eventually what happened was I began to look back on that time, and I could see that it wasn't the other people, the people that I was calling, that were causing me to feel the way I felt. I was causing me to feel the way I felt. And it turned out it was all this negative baggage, these negative thoughts and beliefs that I had about myself. The negative thoughts were creating the negative feelings. The fear I was feeling, the fear of rejection, the fear of criticism, the fear of failure. None of that was coming from anybody else. It was all generated within me. And I got to see that it was a self-recrimination. It was self-hatred. It was, unloving thoughts about myself. It was berating myself. Even when a phone call went well, when I hung up that phone, I would find a way to make myself wrong. You should have said this. You should have said that. Why did you say this? This constant berating myself. And it turns out that was the cause of all the negative emotions that I was experiencing. Now that led to where we are today, which is talking about taking responsibility. Most of my life, I blamed everybody else and everything else for how I felt, especially for how I felt about myself. And I have begun to realize over the last 7 or 8, 9 years, actually longer than that, but this has kind of been ongoing, but beginning to realize that, nobody makes me feel anything. Nobody makes me think anything. Nobody makes me say anything. Nobody makes me feel anything. Nobody makes me do anything. And I began to understand that, I am always choosing in each moment how I'm reacting or responding to that situation. Now, to bring it back to the earlier discussion, the choice that I'm making, that decision, number one, it's usually a habitual, unconscious, subconscious, programmed response based on how I'm perceiving the situation. So if let's say I'm meeting with a client, and that client reminds me of somebody from my past who I had a difficult relationship with, all of a sudden I'm taken back, as I talked about in the audiobook. A lot of times, even when I was a lawyer, I would regress to feeling like a little kid in certain situations and with certain people. And that created a lot of fear and anxiety in me because as a little kid, we can't take care of ourselves in many situations with adults, especially when the adult is acting inappropriately or is angry or whatever. And so I began to realize that the problem was not the person, not my client, or not whatever. The problem was how I was seeing myself in that situation with that person at that moment. And I realized, I can begin to change that, and probably the simplest thing is just the recognition that, I'm not 6 years old anymore. I know how to take care of myself as an adult. I know how to set boundaries with people. I know how to negotiate. I know how to ask for what I want or need in a situation, even in a business relationship. One of the most important things I've learned is that it's up to me to take care of myself in all my relationships, including my business relationships, by asking for what I want or need in that situation and then negotiating. Because what would happen is, whether as a photographer, as a lawyer, or whatever else I've done in my life, I would go into the relationship and not ask for what I needed. I would not negotiate. And then things wouldn't work out the way I wanted them to. And then I would be resentful of them, like somehow it was their fault that I was feeling the way I was feeling, that I had not done what I needed to do to take care of myself. And that's actually my definition of resentment, chapter 6, I think. I have not done what I need. Resentment is when I've not done what I needed to do to take care of myself, and now I'm blaming somebody else for that. And the anger that I think I feel towards them is really misdirected anger that I feel towards myself. So if I don't want to be resentful in my relationships anymore, going in, it's up to me to take care of myself. And that includes having a written contract. It includes, being very clear on what I'm committing to if I'm working for a commercial product photography client. What are their expectations? How many hours am I committing to, and all of that, and making sure all of that works for me, because I know now if I feel resentful later, it's not their fault. And of course, things come up along the way, things change, so it's up to me to speak up for myself. That's something else. When I see myself, who I think I am is a 6-year-old, it's very difficult for me to speak up for myself and say, hey, wait a second, things have changed, we need to renegotiate this point, we need to readjust our agreement. See, 6-year-olds don't do that. 6-year-olds either they become afraid, they cower, they don't speak up for themselves, or they lash out. They yell and scream and rage. And neither one of those is a functional, healthy solution. And the thing that I need to change is how I see myself in that situation. I need to remember that I'm an adult. I'm not 6 years old. I can take care of myself. The other thing is, wanting everybody to like me. For most of my life, I was what you would call a people pleaser or approval seeker or codependent. And, if I thought that somebody didn't like me, it was like a fate worse than death, and I would kind of bend over backwards to try and get people to like me, including lying to them about things, which always caught up with me later and created more problems than would have happened if I was just honest going into the situation. So taking responsibility means that we broke it down this way. We said responsibility is the ability to respond ability. And what that implies is that I have a choice in every situation how I react or respond to life. Now, last week, I'm not going to get into it this week, but last week we talked about the difference between reacting and responding. I'll just say for now, we want to respond. Respond means we have some conscious intentionality about how we're responding to what's coming at us in the world. And so, respondability means that I have the ability to choose how I respond. And the way I respond to life is through my thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. Now, a big thing, as I said earlier, is the recognition that nobody makes me feel anything, good or bad. Most of my life I was blaming everybody else for how I felt. And sometimes it was, bad. And sometimes if I was in love with an attractive woman, it was her fault I felt so good. And then when she broke up with me, it was her fault I felt so bad. And it turns out my feelings had nothing to do with her. It was all about me, how I saw myself, who I thought I was. I have a whole section in chapter 4 on romantic relationships, intimate relationships, and the insanity in my life around my romantic relationships. I'm not going to get into any of that tonight, but the point I want to make is there's this recognition that I have now that in every situation, I get to choose how I'm going to respond to that situation. Now, as I said earlier, it gets a little confusing because a lot of times I'm reacting out of a habitual, conditioned, I have a long history of reacting in certain ways with certain people. So the thing I have to do is begin by being conscious. I have to be present in the moment. And as I shared last week, and I've talked about in the past, what's been helpful for me sometimes has been to, if I know I have a difficult meeting coming up with a client or whatever, I will find somebody beforehand and I will at least talk about the challenges, and sometimes I'll role play. So I'll say, okay, you be the client and I'll be me, and let me just role play this with you. So when the meeting comes up later in the day or later in the week or whenever it is, I'm prepared. I have some level of preparation. And it's things like that that make all the difference in the world, because now I go into that situation not as a 6-year-old, but as an adult. And I have the presence of mind to talk like an adult and to negotiate or whatever we need to do. So there's lots of things like that. And then overall, in general, it's just been, as I said, reprogramming those subconscious thoughts and beliefs about myself. See, what I found for me and what I think is true for many people is we come to a conclusion about who we are as a young child, basically, as a kid. And it's based on our interactions with our parents, with other adults, with our older siblings. All of that creates this self-image. And for me, at least, I realized, by the time I was 6 years old, I was convinced that I was unworthy, I was unlovable, I was bad. I mean, as a 6-year-old, you don't say I'm unlovable, you just say I'm bad. And I felt for most of my childhood and much of my adult life, I thought I was bad. I was guilty, I was unworthy, I was not good enough. And that was all, I was living a life that was run by those subconscious thoughts and beliefs. See, those beliefs are so painful that as a child we dissociate from them. And they become kind of buried in the subconscious. But what happens is they don't go away. They actually run our lives, but now we're not aware of them. Now we just think, well, that's just the way it is. That's just the way I am. There's no conscious recognition that this negative thought or belief about ourselves is running our lives, or at least was running my life. And so as I began to become more aware of that, and in general, started doing this reprogramming, again, with affirmations, vision statements, all that other stuff I've talked about, I began to see myself differently. And as I saw myself differently, my life changed. The very short answer is I went from somebody who could not show my work anywhere as an artist to someone who has had shows and exhibitions as far away as Spain, South America. I've had dozens and dozens of shows in the New York City area, New Jersey. My photos have been published in newspapers and magazines around the world. I've won more than 70 awards for my photography. And I'm somebody who never, before 6 or 7 years ago, I never won an award for anything in my entire life. And the only thing that changed, or the first thing that changed, was how I saw myself. The second thing that had to change, and I talk a lot about this in the book and in these workshops, is I had to start being nicer to myself. Because as I said earlier, it was the self-recrimination that was creating all the fear and the anxiety. And fear is resistance. Fear is paralysis. Fear shuts us down. So as long as I was having all these negative thoughts and beliefs about myself and basically hating myself for my shortcomings, I couldn't take any action. I couldn't submit my photos for publication. I couldn't submit my photos for shows or exhibitions. I couldn't enter contests. I couldn't do any of that stuff because the negative voices were so loud, and I thought that was the truth about me, that it was better to avoid those situations entirely. So I wouldn't feel ashamed, I wouldn't feel rejected, I wouldn't feel criticized. And as I've said many times, the only person who was shaming, rejecting, and criticizing me was me. Turns out everybody else was actually quite nice and supportive. So we're going to take a break in a couple of minutes. Let me just look at this. I want to show you guys this next slide. This is something that we talked about. We kind of tangentially talked about it. Now, as you guys know, I'm a fan of A Course in Miracles. Some of you may be familiar with it. There's a workbook lesson. There's a whole workbook, and there's a lesson for each day of the year. Lesson number 31 is, I'm not a victim of the world I see. Now, I'm not going to get into the metaphysics of that. It's actually a whole involved thing. But the gist of it is that for most of my life, who I thought I was a victim of somebody else's choices and decisions rather than my own. And the way now I know when I'm in victim mode is I do things like I take things personally. In chapter 5 or 6, I talk about the fact that nothing is ever personal in life, ever. Even somebody attacking me on Facebook over my photos, claiming that they're photoshopped, turns out that wasn't personal. And the reason I'm saying that is when you get to chapter 7 in the book, which is about forgiveness, I talk all about what happened in that situation when I didn't take that personally. I'll just give you the very short. I'll give you the spoiler alert. It turned into a 5-figure license deal for me by not taking what somebody was saying about me personally on Facebook, which was really negative. All right, so I don't take. So when I notice I'm taking things personally, that means I'm in victim mode. When I notice I'm blaming other people for how I feel, victim mode. When I feel justified, and this is a huge word for me, justified. I'm justified in treating you this way because of what you did to me, or because of what I think you did to me. And now I'm aware, whenever I'm in that place of feeling justified for lashing out at somebody, for getting revenge, retaliation, attacking somebody, and it could be as subtle as gossiping about somebody. Gossip is a form of attack. Judgment is a form of attack. It's passive in a way, as opposed to, punching somebody in the face. Punching somebody in the face. But it's that feeling justified. So whenever that feeling comes up now, I know, oh, wait a second, I got to stop. That's victim mode. And it turns out I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I'm not a victim of other people's choices and decisions because I have the ability to choose in each instance how I respond. It's that free will, that ability to choose. And the reason taking responsibility is so important is in the next chapter. I've been working on this taking responsibility for over 4 weeks now with you guys. The payoff comes in chapter 3 when we talk about power. There's a very specific relationship between responsibility and power. All right? And you'll have to wait till next week when we start talking about it. But by taking responsibility, I get my power back. Because when I'm blaming you for how I feel, I'm giving my power away. Because now I can't change how I feel. How I feel is a result of what you're doing or not doing, saying or not saying, how you're acting or not acting towards me. And I have no control over that. I am powerless over other people. So I can't change you, I can't control you, but if I'm saying the way I feel is dependent on what you're doing, then all of a sudden I've given my power away to change how I feel, to change what I'm thinking, feeling, saying, and doing. All right, so we want to be on the lookout, at least I do, for when I'm taking things personally, blaming others for how I feel, or feeling justified in attacking or getting even with somebody. I share in the book, I have 8 nieces and nephews, and some of them, their range is from 6 years old to 15 years old. And especially when the kids are younger, especially right now, there's 2 6-year-olds, and they fight a lot. And when an adult goes to intervene, when they're fighting, they always point the finger at the other one. They always point the finger at the other one and say, he did it to me first. And what they're saying is, I'm justified in what I did because of what they did. I'm justified in acting the way I'm acting because of what the other person did. And it's surprising to me sometimes how, as an adult, we still have that 6-year-old mentality where whatever you do becomes a justification for me to act the way that I'm acting. Now, I talk a lot about, in the book and in the workshops, we don't have to become a doormat for somebody else's inappropriate behavior. We can still take care of ourselves. We can still set boundaries. We can remove a person from our life if they're really being inappropriate, or remove ourselves from the situation. But we don't have to be a victim to do that. And I didn't know that for most of my life. Now, maybe you guys know all that. For me, that was like a revelation. I thought I had to be, I had to feel hurt. I had to feel victimized. I had to be resentful. Most of my interactions with other people eventually boiled down to resentment. And it's interesting, if you're familiar with the AA Big Book, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the Big Book says resentment is the #1 offender. And I got to say, in my life, that was true. So what I'm doing now is freeing myself from my past by taking responsibility for my present, for who I am in this moment. Let me just see what the next... All right, and then this is the other slide for tonight. So one of the things that I've learned to do through my 12-step work, as well as just my life in general, is to take responsibility by making an amends. Okay, I make an apology. If I've done something that's harmed somebody else or myself, I make an amends. I make an apology. That's part of taking responsibility. So I can say for most of my life, I was very reluctant to admit when I made a mistake, when I did something wrong that harmed somebody, because I thought that was just more evidence that I was a bad person. I thought that was just proof that I was unworthy, undeserving, that I was guilty, that I was bad. And it turns out that's not the truth. And so we talked last week about the fact that responsibility is not the same as blame. It's not the same as shame. It's not the same as guilt. It's not even the same as liability. You know, the legal definition of responsibility includes liability, but what I'm talking about here, it's not even that. What we want to do now is think of responsibility as the 3 A's. I don't have the slide on here tonight, but I had it on last week, and it's in the book. The 3 A's: awareness, accountability, and action. All right, awareness is just what it sounds like. I'm present in the moment, I'm conscious, I'm aware. I recognize that I've done something that's harmed myself or another person. Accountability, okay, is exactly what it sounds like. I'm willing to be accountable. If I've done something that's harmed another person, I'm willing to tell the truth about that. I'm willing, if it's appropriate and in an appropriate way, to go to that person and make an amends, and that's the action part. Awareness, accountability, action. The action is the setting things right part. Could be restitution, could be some kind of an apology, an amends, a living amends where I actually change my behavior, and so on. So that's, for me at least, and I'm suggesting that if you guys resonate with what I've been talking about for the last 45 minutes, you know, that this is a different way to look at responsibility. So instead of feeling bad about myself when I've made a mistake, now I recognize it's an opportunity for me to feel good about myself by taking responsibility. When I go to somebody that I've harmed, and I admit the exact nature of my wrongs, I feel better about myself. It builds my self-esteem. See, for most of my life, I thought it was gonna diminish my self-esteem. I was gonna feel worse about myself, but I actually feel better about myself when I take responsibility. And then the other thing that I want to point out, which has been important for me, is this idea that guilt is just another word for self-hatred. Feeling bad about myself never makes me a better person. Feeling bad about myself never helps me. It never moves me forward. It only holds me back. It feeds the low self-esteem. It feeds the negative thoughts and beliefs. All right? So I suggest we don't want to feel guilty. What we want to do is be aware. We want to be accountable, and then we want to take action to set things right. If I'm aware, I'm accountable, and I take action to set things right, I don't have to feel bad about myself. I don't have to feel guilty. I don't even really have to feel remorse if I'm aware enough in the moment to catch myself and in the 10th step in 12-step programs, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So promptly admitting when I'm wrong frees me of the guilt, because when I've done something that hurts another person, I feel bad. That's not who I want to be. You know, so I carry that guilt around with me, and the only way I get free of that is by taking responsibility and making my amends. All right. I want to look at the exercises, the assignment for tonight. We're going to take a 5-minute break. If you're new, I know some of you guys are new. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play a song. It's a 5-minute, there's going to be a 5-minute break. I'm going to play a song. It was the same song at the beginning if you were here. And I have the lyrics for that song. And so it's an opportunity this has been a very important song in me reprogramming myself. Some of you guys really have taken a liking to this song. So I'm going to play that song for 5 minutes during the break. The lyrics are on screen, so if you want to sing along, you can. But when we come back, we're going to look at the assignment for tonight. So we're only going to do part A, I think, and that is to list 5 things you love and appreciate about yourself. All right. Now, I know you guys were all eager to do this. I'm sure you all have a list that's much longer than 5. We'll just focus on the first 5 things. And then the second process, the second assignment is something you can do on your own, but you can share about it next week. Come back and report about it next week. And so I think that's it. We're going to take the break right now. We're going to come back in 5 minutes. All right. And then, as I said, we will go from there. All right, again, so if you're new, that song is called Love My Life by Robbie Williams. I'm going to play it again at the end, so you have one more chance to sing along. And I forgot to tell you guys, before we did the break, I've changed the lyrics now when I sing. So instead of I love my life, I sing I love myself. I am powerful. I am beautiful. I love myself. And then instead of I am free, I say I love being me. All right, just thought I'd share that with you guys. So I want to go back to we're going to open it up in 1 second. I just want to go back to the exercise for tonight. All right, so 5 things you love and appreciate about yourself. I'm going to start, so I'm going to show you my answers, and then we'll open it up. You guys can share your answers. So 5 things I love and appreciate about myself. Number 1, my sense of humor. I still crack myself up sometimes, as I've been redoing the audiobook, listening to it and reading it again. There's stuff in here that just cracks me up. So I love and appreciate my sense of humor. My intellect and my mental abilities, it served me really well in my life. I appreciate that about myself, that I have the ability to problem solve, to understand intellectual concepts and all of that. Number 3 is my perseverance and my tenacity. I don't have time to tell you some of the stories tonight, but when I made that decision to change from lawyer to photographer, I needed a lot of perseverance to get to where I finally have gotten in my career. Things like submitting my photos to a particular newspaper here in New York City for almost a year, several times a month for almost a year, without ever hearing back from them before they published my first photo. Number 4, I appreciate my creativity. The fact that I can do stuff like this, awesome photos like this. I appreciate that about myself, especially because I don't have any kind of art education. I don't have any background in art, anything like that. I was economics, I was law, I was business. I have an MBA, I have a law degree. I never even took an art appreciation class in college. So I love my creativity. I really appreciate that about myself. And number 5, which is probably the most important, is my willingness to treat myself and others with kindness and the willingness to forgive myself and others. And I really appreciate that about myself. I love that about myself, that I'm more willing. I'm not perfect. I don't forgive every time, or I don't forgive right away every time, but I'm working on that. But that is something I really appreciate about myself. All right, so now we want to hear from you guys. So let me just unpin my video so you guys can be heard. All right, so you can unmute yourselves, and who would like to tell us at least 5 things that you love and appreciate about yourself? Nick.
Sure. It's thinking about this a minute. I would say, perseverance, one that you mentioned, creativity, humor, maybe. My ability, when I do focus, I can definitely learn, so those are, about all I have.
All right, cool. Awesome. So again, I said I was going to mention my relationship with Nick. Nick's company is actually the company that produces these large prints that I was telling you guys about last week, bigwalldecor.com. And I have to say, you know, I actually met Nick out just one night shooting. I was out photographing the New York City skyline, and I saw this cool-looking guy. You had your dog with you, I think.
Yeah.
And I just went over, that's another thing I love about myself is how friendly I am now. Because for a long time, if I saw another photographer, I looked at them as the competition. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to talk to that guy, you know, because they're the competition and I have to get the better photo than they do. I don't do that anymore. And I'm glad I don't, because that's how I met Nick. And Nick's company, as I said, produces these large prints and sells them. And I'm honored to be part of his roster of artists. I have a little idea of how much work it's taken for him to build this business, but it's a beautiful thing to see the progress that he's made. Him and his guy, Ben, I don't know if Ben is your partner or works for you, but you guys do a great job, and I'm really, really grateful to be part of the team. So thank you, and I'm so glad you're here tonight.
It's so interesting because I'm not a big small talker, Peter. I don't meet people like I met you, and I think it speaks to maybe your openness, or I felt comfortable talking to you. I don't normally do that. So it's just funny how one thing, one event, getting out of myself a little bit, out of the usual of how I, kind of just put my head down, and one interaction can lead to, a relationship that carries through the years, and we can learn from each other. I mean, this is awesome, Peter. So I'm just so happy to be here.
Cool. Thank you. Great. Who else? Thank you, Nick. We'll hear 5 things you love about yourself or appreciate, or both.
I can go next. I'm Cindy.
Cynthia.
Hello. This was fabulous tonight. The things that I appreciate about myself, my tenacity and my willingness to start again. And maybe that's the same as tenacity, but when I fall down, get discouraged, I start again anyway. And I reach out for help at that time, and you have been one of those people to help me. So I really, truly appreciate that. I appreciate my smile. I look at myself on these Zoom things, and sometimes I put on my screen because it's too much to deal with my face. I'm like, whoa. But I'm 73 years old, and I love the body that I'm living in today. And I'm grateful for all the things it has done for me for these 73 years. So I really appreciate this home in which my being resides at the present time. And I appreciate my willingness to support others in their endeavors. And that's how I got to show up with you, Peter, and I am the beneficiary. And I love the Nicholas, the things that you're doing together too. So it's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cynthia. Beautiful. Thank you. Who else?
I will go next, Peter.
Rajiv.
Yeah. So maybe I don't have 5 things to tell, but yeah, I can tell what I love on myself. Is that first, I am self-learner, hardworking, and I help people whenever want. And that's it. I always make friends like that. And if there's the thing with me, and I don't have all the 5 what I love from myself. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. So let me add 1 to that list, because you forgot one. And that is that you're a really, really, really good photographer. And I know you've worked really, really hard on your craft, on your skills. I've seen your trajectory. So, and I know how committed you are, and I know how creative you are. You're a great photographer.
Thank you.
Awesome.
One more thing, Peter. Can you please repeat the website name for the Nick which you mentioned for the big prints?
So the company is called Big Wall Decor, BigWalldecor.com.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rajiv. Who else?
I guess it's my turn. How are you, Peter?
Good. How are you, Barb?
Okay. I guess I don't know if I have 5, but I was thinking about it and I said I have compassion. I really do. Yeah, compassion. And we all know what that means. I think when I interact with people, it can come through empathy, friendliness, like you said. That's it. I'll work on the other 2.
Can I give you one?
Yes.
So again, I just want to say you have the willingness. I mean, my experience of you, especially in the last year or so, is you have a willingness to improve your life, to have new experiences, to kind of reach beyond your comfort zone.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, and that's not easy.
No, it's not.
I have one quick scenario, and I just wanted to ask you a question. I had a bulletin, whatever it is, and you know me. I have a different program. I didn't know how to use it. The bulletin has to be out by 4:00 today, and at 1:00 I have, if you want to call him my boss, give me his story, and my bulletin was finished and I was about to submit it, and he comes in with 2 pages to add to the bulletin. Now, if you do that, I need to add 4 pages. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I sat there, and of course I panicked, but I've been working all this stuff. And all of a sudden, people are coming in, like say, the people from religious education, or this student, or this one and that one. I would ask them a question just to try to help. And it was really amazing, Peter, that nobody knew anything. Oh, I can't do that. Oh, I'm not tech this. Oh, I don't know. I was like looking at everybody going, maybe that was to help me, Peter, because remember how I told you I'm so tech stupid? Well, I must have had half a dozen, maybe more people tell me, oh, I don't know. I can't do that. I was like, okay, join the crowd. But, it was just very funny. And it had to be in by 4:00. And I'm telling you, what I wound up doing is calling the printer, and they helped me with it. So I did reach out and got help. I stayed calm. And at 4:00, when the church bells were ringing, I finished.
I only have one thing to say, Barb.
Woohoo! But my question to you was going to be, did I involve all those other people? See, here it is again. Here I'm saying I made a mistake. I guess there's no saying there was a mistake. It's just how the people were. They were in my life or in my space, so I involved them.
I don't want to get too into it, but I'll say this.
Yeah.
It points out another thing to be appreciative of yourself about, which is your resourcefulness, because you figured out a way to make it work. You figured out a way to get it done even without, whoever you were expecting to help you. So resourcefulness.
I'll write all these down.
Yeah, resourcefulness. And what was the other thing I was going to say? Just ran out of my head. There was something else in there. So what happened was these people gave you an opportunity to experience yourself as that. If they had jumped in and saved you from this problem, you would have never got to find out how capable you are. That's the other thing.
Okay, capable.
How capable you are.
All right.
Right?
Yes.
Thank them.
Okay, I will. Tomorrow.
Beautiful. Who else? Thank you, Barb.
I can add something, Peter. Something happened to me today that I thought I related to in the earlier. I had been struggling with somebody that I work with, and they were making me feel a certain way, or I was feeling a certain way, and my feeling was a blame kind of thing. And it had taken on, it had gone on for a little while, and I started to get more and more frustrated, and I went home the other night, and I was like, I'm being really hard on this person. And I just started to think through their perspective of how I was acting. They weren't living up to the job, but the way I was responding to that wasn't being, the leader I was. It was more out of anger and frustration, and I was kind of making them feel worse about the situation. So I started to kind of reflect on that, and literally today I come in and this person wants to talk to me. And they're so upset and says, I know I'm not doing a good job and all of this stuff. And instead of continuing my anger towards them and pointing out all these things, that I still had left we hadn't really discussed and things that just wasn't happy with, I took the responsibility and I said, you know what? It's my fault. I'm being way too hard on you right now. I can see, I love you. I can see your effort. There's little mistakes, little things, but my response to him isn't right. So I would like to take this opportunity to apologize to you. And it was just unbelievable how it propelled my day. And all of a sudden I had my power back. It was like, boom, and it was just that, but not to say I'm not going to get frustrated in the future, but it's amazing how that energy can shift when you just do something a little more less involved with yourself, I guess.
Well, that was not just a little thing, though. I mean, you took your power back.
Yeah, and I felt it.
That's the power of taking responsibility. See, most of us don't want to admit when we've done something wrong because we think, oh my God, what are they going to think about me? Or, again, this is just more proof that I don't know what I'm doing. When I started, my first job out of law school was with a law firm in Los Angeles. It was a big firm. They represented Michael Jackson, Mike Tyson. It was a top firm. And I had done really well in law school, and I was, near the top of my class, and I had this much self-confidence. And what happened was when I got in that job, I was so afraid to admit that I didn't know something or to ask for help, because I thought if I asked for help, it was an admission that I didn't know what I was doing, and that made me a worthless person, And I squandered that opportunity. I eventually got let go from that job. And it was all this stuff that was running me that had nothing to do with the situation. There were probably people there who would have been happy to help me, but I couldn't ask. Now, to be on the other side of that, to have somebody who is my boss or whatever take responsibility for their part, that's beautiful, Nick. I think what occurred to me is you just bought yourself an employee whose loyalty is probably now up here.
Yeah, I totally, yeah. And I wouldn't have acted that way 5 years ago. I would have taken the opportunity to continue to bully and be angry and that kind of thing. But
that's beautiful.
Doing it the opposite way just gave me so much more energy, and I know it helped them,
That's taking responsibility, that's being a decent human being, that's being a great boss, employer. Beautiful. Love it. Who else? Got a few more minutes. Thank you, Nick.
Hey, it's Dee Dee in Washington. I want to say two things for sure. I love, love, love my connection to my higher power, my God, which is also part of my intuition. I love that about me and for me. And I also love my ability to heal, my body's ability to heal and keep me well. And I love being in this workshop, and I love being part of your Be Bigger Today team. And I love being in the recovery process for a lot of years. I think that's 5. But I also love the spiritual. I think the elders in my life and the wisdom counsel, that brought me to spirituality. I love that. So thanks for the opportunity to say what I love. Pass.
Beautiful. Thank you. Let me ask you, Dee Dee, before you go. So having a relationship with something greater, a higher power, what is the quality? I'll just say it. For me, what I realized was it takes courage to have that kind of relationship. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that about myself.
Yeah, because I hear in Technicolor, it's not always easy. It's definitely life-changing. Thank you.
Cool. Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Couple more minutes. Who else?
I'll say something.
Great.
Hi.
Hi, Jessica.
Hello. 5 things that I love about myself is my creativity. I love creating things for myself or for other people. Brainstorming. I love that. I love my sense of humor. It can be a bit dark at times, but I love it. I love my smile. I love being a mom. I do love that. Yeah. Did I get all 5? I gotta think
There's
about
one
it.
more.
Oh, and I love connecting with people. I love my ability to connect.
Beautiful. So Jessica was my hairdresser for years. She cut my hair. That's how I know Jessica. And I was immediately, you know what I love about you? One of the things I noticed right away was your openness, your kindness. I felt comfortable, even though you had scissors in your hand, I felt comfortable immediately in your presence. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. That is one of the things that I do enjoy as well.
Beautiful. Thank you. Couple more minutes. Anybody else?
Hi, it's Linda. Can I be heard?
We can hear you, Linda.
Yay! I've been fiddling with audio. Anyway, the exercise is what we love about ourselves, right?
List 5 things you love and appreciate about yourself. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Let's go. What do I do? Love. I love my faith. I love my faith to and my spiritual life. I love my creativity. I love my resourcefulness. I love my joy. I love my intelligence. And is that 5? I lost count.
I think so.
Oh,
Tell
okay.
me, just briefly, tell me about, you said you love your faith. So is it faith in yourself? Is it faith in a higher power? What is it, faith in humanity?
Oh, my goodness. Well, first and foremost, I think as an Eastern Orthodox Christian, that is, just the basis of my spiritual life. And from that, I take strength that allows me to have faith in all of the other things. And I'm happy to report a successful, I've been granted a full scholarship for a 2-year program in graduate studies. In that program I applied for just last week. So, yay!
All right, well, Linda, I only have one thing to say. Awesome.
So it will mean missing, because the classes start in October, it will mean missing a couple of I'll see how the schedules go, but it's on Wednesday night. So I'm going to see.
Oh, you can't do it then. No, you can't do it.
So
Great.
Anyway, thank you. Every blessing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, got time for one more. All right, well, you know what, Judy, why don't you share, and then when Lynn gets in touch, then we'll come back to her.
Oh, you're going to put me on the spot. I guess the first thing I thought of was that I love the relationship I have with my adult children. And believe me, it takes a lot of work. I just think of all sorts of things. And also, I love the fact that I have grandchildren in my life and that we have relationships. And that's pretty neat. I love the fact that I'm working on walking through a lot of fear in being part of starting a business at my age. And that's pretty cool. And I also have a little job on the side that I love. I teach kids coming to age for their bar and bat mitzvahs. And that took a lot because I had to walk through a lot of fear for that. When somebody mentioned to me that I could do that, it took me many years to get to the point, and I'm really good at it. And I also love my faith. You know, like I'm grateful to be Jewish, and we're going into the new year, and it's a time of perspective and, you know, of introspection, and that I have the ability to be willing to do that. I do that every day anyway in a 12-step program, but, you know, it just heightens it a bit. And also, I love dear friends that are in my life that because of a 12-step program I wouldn't have otherwise.
Beautiful. Great. Awesome. And it was your willingness, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know for me, you know, it's my willingness to put myself out there when I join a group like this or like a 12-step program. There's this quality within us that I love about myself, is my willingness to extend myself, to take a healthy risk, meeting new people, being of service, you know, everything you described. So that's beautiful. Thank you. Okay, we got you.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I think it was my headphone that I have. I didn't hear everything. So I did want to say that I have a good sense of humor, and I'm a hard worker, and I am patient, honest, and if I'm doing something wrong, I can go back and excuse myself for it. So, that's it.
So that's beautiful. I love that. And I also bet that you're very talented in at least one particular area, right? Your talent as a hairdresser?
Yes, I think for doing it for 34 years. So, and I have my own business since 22 years now. So I think if I won't be good, I won't be there anymore. So I'm happy about that.
Exactly. That was my point. That's amazing to have your own business or to be working in that way for 20, 30 years. Got to be doing something right. So that's great. I'm sure you're very talented. All right, beautiful. All right, we're going to wrap it up unless Michelle wants to say something. Does Michelle want to say anything?
Hi. I don't know if I have 5.
I'll
Hard
take
worker, caring. I love my animals. 2 more, I don't know.
I bet you're a great mom.
No, thanks.
I know you're.
That's not easy.
I'm sure. I'm sure. And I know you're a good photographer. So
Oh,
there you
thank
go.
you. You know, I just have to believe it. And, you know, I have a new friend that came into my life from my other friend that I had lost. And she's like taking over her spot. And she's like, you know, you really are good, Michelle. And she's like, I have my husband saying the same thing. And it's just, I have to believe it. And I have to like work more on a professional camera and not just my phone. And, you know, I know there's everything's technology today with like YouTube and all that, but I'm more hands-on. And now with COVID, it's not, I don't think it's like, you know, to, you know, reach out to somebody to show me like visually how to work the camera. You know what I'm saying? And know where to be at certain times of where to catch, like whether it be, you know, just a moment of like a rainbow or something that, you know, to be at a certain spot. I'd like to learn.
That's all coming. It's okay. It's okay to be a great photographer with your cell phone. All right.
Yeah, I have that one site I told you I was on Facebook, and I've gotten so many likes, close to 400 on a couple, and then on Aruba's website there as well. So I guess I'm doing something right.
It's just, you know what? It's the hardest thing. This is why I keep saying, it's who do you think you are? How do you see yourself? That runs everything. And a lot of us have some really old baggage that we have to let go of. And I remember when I started, I haven't talked about it yet, I don't think, but when I entered a show, it was one of the first shows that I entered. It was an art exhibit. It was a little art gallery on Long Island. And not only did I get into that show, but I won third place in that show. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, when they called my name to come up to the front of the room and get my little ribbon that said third place, I couldn't move. I was stuck. I was like, I couldn't believe it. And then the guy called out, he didn't know who I was. He called out my name again. I still didn't move. Somebody pointed at me from across the room. And everybody turned around and looked at me, and I turned around and looked behind me. It was like they were talking about somebody else. I could not imagine that I had won third place in this art show.
I think you're right. I think there is a lot of baggage, and I just have to get through that.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what the book is about. How I got through my baggage. So look, for me, it took work. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. And a lot of us have years and years and years of baggage that we have to clear out. Stick with it. I know you're gonna do it.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
When do you think the audio will come out, Peter? The audiobook.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping in the next. It was supposed to be yesterday, Nick. I'm hoping in the next 4 weeks or so. I don't want to get into all the details, but some of the stuff that I recorded earlier, I didn't do it right, so I have to redo a lot of it.
I'm just glad you're doing it. That's awesome, because I'll definitely get it.
Yeah. Okay. Great. There's one more person. I didn't hear from Helena. Helena, do you want to say anything?
Well, I think for me, I just try to do a lot of gratitude these days, like, gratitude for things I already have, and just the daily gratitude when I get up in the morning and, before I go to bed. And I guess it has to include myself, So anyway, that's it.
Being grateful for yourself, for being who you are.
Yes, that too. And just overall, like, just being grateful for small things that we already have, we don't recognize. Yeah.
All right, good. Thank you. All right, I'm going to play the song one more time. It's 3.5 minutes. Sing along, and if you are feeling daring, instead of "I love my life," I love myself, and then we'll come back for our final goodbyes. All right, guys. So again, if you're new, that song is "Love My Life," Robbie Williams. And you get on iTunes, or I got on Amazon Music. If you like what we're doing, please tell your friends. Everybody's welcome. You don't have to have the book, but it's helpful, obviously. We're going to start chapter 3 next week. We're going to talk about true power and ultimately true happiness. Cool. All right, everybody good?
Great. Thank you so much.
Yes,
All right,
we're
All right. Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.